Moving your enterprise to the cloud should involve some careful planning and assessments. You need to identify the services you think you need, and then how you're going to manage and operate them. Along with that, performance requirements are going to be a top consideration. Storage performance in particular is what I want to talk about today in the area of shared storage in the cloud. We have talked about Azure Files, and that is a great offering for shared storage. In fact, I have a video coming soon on setting up a SQL failover cluster instance with Azure Premium Files, so subscribe so you don't miss that. But I want to shift the shared storage conversation just a little bit and talk about Azure NetApp Files. I'm Dean Safola, and this is the Azure Academy. Azure NetApp Files, or ANF for short, is a first-party service in Azure. That means that you don't have to add it from the Azure Marketplace like a third-party type tool, but it's available in the Azure portal today, and we're going to walk you through setting all of this up. So this means also that if you have an issue with NetApp Files, you can put in a support request just like any other Azure resource, and then ANF specialists will be able to deal with that and get that resolved for you. And before we get started today, I just want to give a big shout out for Kirk Ryan. He's a NetApp principal technologist and helped me to learn about NetApp for this video. So you can check him out here on his LinkedIn page as well as his YouTube channel. Do me a favor and subscribe to his channel and thank him for the work that he's done in the Azure portal. We can find ANF either by typing it into the search box at the top, or you can find it under the All Services menu by going to the Storage category, and then you can see ANF is right over here. So I'll launch ANF, and then I'll go to create my NetApp account. And when we do, since I'm not currently set up for it, we have this blue box here at the bottom where we need to register for NetApp Files. So I'll go ahead and click that link. That brings us out to the dock here, and we've got this blue box here at the top telling us that before registering, we have to have received the email from the NetApp Files team confirming that we've been granted access to the service. Now, hold on a second. What's going on here? I thought this was a first-party service in Azure. And yes, it is. This is actually being done on purpose, and the reason why has nothing to do with being some third-party service. Because NetApp Files has guaranteed performance metrics that they need to hit, we need to be sure that there is enough capacity in the Azure platform to satisfy all of the users. So because of that, the onboarding process is staggered like this, because again, remember, this is enterprise class high performance workloads we're talking about. And if we see a drop in performance, then that breaks the SLAs that's being offered. Then customer satisfaction goes down, and Microsoft certainly wants to avoid that. So these kind of careful steps are taken on this particular service. So what you can do first here, as number one says, is you can click this link. You can fill out this form, and that'll go to the ANF team, and we'll scroll down just a little bit, and you can see it's talking about what type of workloads you're looking to host, and especially there's that call out again for SAP HANA, as well as understanding some of your use case and what regions you're looking to use this in. Once you've gotten that notice back from the ANF team, then your subscription should be enabled to start using it. I need to give NetApp a name here, and I'll call mine ANF-0. You select the subscription and resource group you want to build it in, as well as your region, and then we hit create. So our NetApp account has been set up, so we'll click on that. And now the next thing we need to do is create a capacity pool. Now the capacity pool is just a logical construct representing our disks. So I'll click add at the top here, and we need to give our capacity pool a name. And I'll call it ANF-pool-0, and here's where we can select our service level. And the service levels are directly tied to the performance tier that you're going to have your storage allocated on. And before we pick which service level we want, let's go back to the docs. And under the concepts in the table of contents, we have these service levels for NetApp. And you can see the range here from standard at 16 megabytes of throughput per terabyte all the way up to 128. Back in the portal for my example here, I'm just going to pick the standard tier, and then we have to choose our size. Now the smallest size that we can provision is 4 terabytes. So for the start of this example, I'll just provision the 4 and we'll hit OK. And now that it's complete, we'll click on our capacity pool. Since we want to use an SMB share, we're going to need to do one thing before we create our volumes, and that is to set up our Active Directory connection. And this is because we're going to be able to leverage Active Directory for authentication to our NetApp share. So click the join button at the top. And I've filled out all the required information here. So we've got the IP addresses for our primary and secondary DNS server, the fully qualified name of our domain, as well as the name of our AD site, what prefix we want the computer object that we're going to create to have, and if we want to specify the OU path where we'll create that object, as well as our credentials. Now, Microsoft does not store any of these credentials, and these creds will be used to set up an AD computer object, so be sure that the account you use has rights to do that. Here on my domain controller, I've got AD Sites and Services open, and this is where you can find your site name. And my site name in this case is just called Azure, and the path for the OU that you want to create an object in. This is an optional setting. If you choose to not put this in, then it will just go in the computers container by default. And to be able to see the OU paths from the objects here, you'll have to make sure that the advanced view is turned on. And if it is, you can right click on any OU that you like, go to Properties, go to the Attributes editor, and you're looking for the distinguished name. And ANF will need everything up to the DC, which calls out your domain name specifically. So we need the first part here, and then you can just hit join. All right, and now that that's complete, we'll go back to our capacity pool and click on volume. So it's from the volumes itself that we're provisioning the shares, and you can have multiple volumes within a single capacity pool. So don't feel like you have to use all 4 terabytes for one share, although you certainly can, but you can break this up into shares that are just right for your particular workloads. So I'll click on the volumes link, and then we'll go to add a new volume. And I'll call the name of this volume ANF FSLogix, and now we have to set our quota, and this is the volume size. Now the smallest size volume we can create is 100 gigabytes, and we can go up to the maximum size of our capacity pool. And I'll just stick with the minimum at this point. We're going to increase this later. And now we need to select the virtual network in Azure that we're going to create this on. And the reason for this is that we're going to provision this volume into our Azure virtual network so that we have a private IP to work against. So since I already have a virtual network in Azure, I'll select that. I don't have a dedicated subnet. We can create one right here. So I'll call my subnet ANF-subnet, and I've already got my IP range selected. And then the subnet delegation is already decided for us, and this is just a normal feature of a subnet to be able to be dedicated to a particular type of service, and we'll hit OK. So before I hit next, there's one other thing that I'll call out, and that's that user-defined routes and network security groups are not supported against the ANF subnet. So the recommendation is if you need those items in your network, that you should apply them on the other subnets, and then you can control traffic flow to the NetApp volume from those other subnets. So I'll click next. Now we need to select our protocol type, and we have 2 options, NFS or SMB. And in the NFS side, we have the option of 2 versions, NFS 3 or 4.1, and you'd probably want an NFS share if you're dealing more in the Linux world. And support for NFS is in preview right now for Azure Files. So if you're interested in that, give me some comments down below and we can create a video on that. So since we're using FSLogix, I'll select SMB, and it's brought in our Active Directory connection for us, and we're going to set up the share name again of ANF-FSLogix. We'll click next and add some appropriate tags. And we've got our cost code as well as our application name of Azure NetApp Files. This is the lab environment, and it's on the standard tier. And we'll hit next so we can review everything that we've got here. Then we'll hit create. Our volume finished building, and you can see from our virtual network that provisioned in our new ANF subnet, we do have a dedicated network card to connect us to our ANF device. Back in our ANF, there's our completed volume. We can see its name, quota, protocol of SMB, the mounting path, what service level we have, and the capacity pool that we belong to. So we'll click on the volume, and over on the left, we have the mounting instructions. And this couldn't be any easier. We just click here to copy the mounting path, and we go to a server within our domain. And here on my domain controller, you can see the computer object that was created. And it's through that object basically that we're going to tunnel our permissions so that we can get to our storage frame. And I've pulled up the Windows File Explorer, and I'll just paste in the path and hit enter. And there we go, direct access to ANF without having to input any other credentials. So I'll just create a new folder here, and we'll create a new file within that folder, throw some text in there, close the file. And I've just copied some other random files onto the share here. And now we've got something to work with. So back in Azure, over on the left of the volumes, we'll go to Snapshots. And then at the top, we'll go to add a snapshot, and I'll just call it the initial for April 2020. We'll hit OK. And this has done a snapshot of the entire volume for us. And now that we have a snapshot, we can do a restore, which we'll come back to in just a moment. Let's set this up for FSLogix. Now we can certainly map to this file share for FSLogix directly, or optionally, like we did with Azure Files, we can go to our DFS. We can right click on our DFS namespace and add a new folder. I'll call this ANF and go to add a target, paste in the path to the ANF Share, hit OK again. Back on our File Explorer, I can put in the path now for my DFS Share pointing at Azure NetApp files, hit enter, and we can get directly there. So I can use this path now to obscure the name of the ANF Share if that is something that you want to do. Again, this is completely optional. So now I want to set up FSLogix for my users' profiles. So I'm going to open up the Group Policy Management console, and I've already created a policy here for FSLogix. I'll right click on that and go to Edit. And here we'll go to the Computer Policy, we'll go to the Administrative Templates and FSLogix. Then I'll open up my profile container. Now the two keys that we know that we need is the enabled and the VHD locations. So I'm going to modify my VHD locations from pointing at my DFS share for FSLogix, which goes to Azure Files, and I'm going to replace that with the new ANF share. I'll hit OK for that. I've logged into my WVD agent and we'll run my session desktop. And it's loading our FSLogix profile for Maria Hill. And if I pull up the File Explorer and go to my Z drive, which again is my DFS share, here's my NetApp files. And inside there, amongst the other folders, we have a folder here for Maria Hill, and there are our FSLogix profiles. Now that we're back in NetApp files, we want to simulate that Monday morning 9 a.m. logon storm. And for the amount of users we have in this hypothetical case, the amount of performance we're getting out of our normally fine 100 gigabytes of capacity is just not cutting it. And what we need to do is we need more IOPS right now so that we can get everybody online fast. We're going to go up here to resize, and the only thing we have to do is change our quota here from 100 gigabytes, and we'll reprovision that for our maximum of 4 terabytes and hit OK. So this has now dynamically increased the amount of performance that we are able to get through this same volume without any interruption of service. And we'll relaunch our session desktop. And that login took about 10 seconds to get us back to Maria Hill. So I'll show you one more thing here. I'm going to take all of these files and I'm just going to do a delete on those. Now that I've deleted those files, I'll right click and go to Properties and go to Previous Versions. And here is the snapshot that we took earlier. I'll go to Open that. I'll just select one file here and copy it right to my desktop. But let me close out of here. I want to do a full restore, which I can do directly here in Windows. Just click the restore and that'll just copy over all of the files, which you can see happening here in the background. And our restore is complete and no harm done. So I hope you've enjoyed this brief look at Azure NetApp Files and what it could do for you. And again, this is aimed more at the enterprise class workloads. So think about Windows Virtual Desktop like we showed here today, as well as HPC or the Azure Kubernetes Service, and of course SAP, and any other time you need high amounts of capacity or performance. So if you thought that this video was good or learned something new, go ahead and click that thumbs up icon. And if you know of somebody who would benefit from this video, please feel free to share it with them and give me some comments down below on any questions that you have or any suggestions for future videos. And while you're down there, go ahead and click that notification bell and the subscribe button if you haven't done that already. Join us here at the Azure Academy, where we're all just trying to help everybody learn all about Azure. And we do have several new series coming up very soon, so you don't want to miss those. And if you're looking for something more, over here on the right, we've got our latest videos as well as one that we've picked out just for you so that you can keep on learning all about Azure. Thanks very much for joining us today, and we will see you in the next video. Happy learning.